You won't believe what happened when the HOA tried to flex their power on my own property. It all started on a quiet weekend when I decided to take my jet ski out for a spin on the lake. My lake, right in the middle of my private ranch. The sun was shining, the water was calm, and I thought it was the perfect way to spend the afternoon. What I didn't expect was to see a white SUV pulling up near my gate, followed by flashing red and blue lights. Next thing I know, a deputy is walking down my driveway, calm but clearly confused. Apparently, someone from the nearby HOA called the cops, saying there was unauthorized water activity happening. I couldn't believe it. I mean, how do you get reported for enjoying your own property? I was just jet skiing, minding my business, not disturbing anyone. But here we were, me, the deputy, and a nosy HOA neighbor peeking from the distance. Now, I don't want to spoil what happened next, but let's just say, the moment I handed over the deed to the officer, everything changed. The look on his face said it all. I could tell he knew this wasn't going to go the way the HOA wanted. But here's the thing. This wasn't even the first time they'd tried pulling something like this. Stick around, because what came after will really make you question how far some people will go just to feel in control. This wasn't just a random complaint. It felt personal. See, ever since I bought this ranch, some folks from the nearby HOA community have had a problem with it. Even though my property isn't under their control, it's like they can't stand the idea that someone nearby has more freedom than they do. I've got a private lake, a few acres of peace and quiet, and yeah, sometimes I enjoy it. Jet skiing, having bonfires, letting the dogs run around. Nothing wild, just living life. But for whatever reason, that seems to rub them the wrong way. I remember the first time I got a note taped to my gate. It wasn't even signed, just some vague warning about neighborhood expectations. I brushed it off, thinking it was a one-time thing. But then came the emails, the random complaints to the county. One guy even stood at the edge of my property, lined with binoculars once. I'm not kidding. And each time, they acted like they had some kind of say in what I do on land I legally own. That's what made today so crazy. I was literally jet skiing on a body of water that's shown on my deed, on land that's been in my family for years. And yet, here I was explaining myself to a sheriff's deputy like I broke some law. The whole time, I couldn't help but wonder, was this really just about a jet ski or was there something bigger going on behind the scenes? As the deputy stood there, still holding my property deed, I could tell he was trying to piece it all together. He wasn't aggressive, or anything. Actually, he seemed kind of annoyed that he even had to be there. I explained calmly that the lake was completely private and clearly marked within my boundary lines. I even offered to walk him down to the dock and show him the survey markers. He nodded, but you could tell this wasn't the first time he'd been dragged into some petty neighborhood dispute. That's when he mentioned something that caught me off guard. He said, "You'd be surprised how often these folks call us, sometimes for stuff that's not even a crime." Apparently, the HOA had a reputation for pushing limits, trying to control more than they actually had authority over. They'd called before on other property owners nearby, sometimes even getting into legal threats over fencing styles, tree trimming, and even noise complaints that turned out to be from wildlife. And here's where it got even more strange. One of my neighbors, an older gentleman named Roy, who lives just outside the HOA border, had warned me months ago. He said there was a small group within the HOA board who believed my land should have been part of their development from the start, some kind of old zoning dispute from years back. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now, standing here with a cop on my porch, I was starting to wonder if Roy was right all along. As I stood there talking with the deputy, I could see the HOA board president, yeah, that guy, parked up the road in his golf cart, arms crossed, just watching. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just sat there like he was waiting for the show to end in his favor. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about noise or water safety or whatever excuse they used. This was a quiet war, and I'd become the main target. The deputy asked a few more questions, nothing aggressive, but you could tell he was trying to make sure all the boxes were checked. I answered everything honestly, even handed over a printed copy of the property map showing the lake well within my boundary. Still, the way he kept glancing up the road at the golf cart made me uneasy, like maybe someone was putting pressure on him behind the scenes. The HOA might not have legal authority here, but they clearly had influence. Then, out of nowhere, a second car pulled into my drive. Not a patrol car, an SUV with tinted windows. A woman stepped out in a blazer, clipboard in hand. She didn't say who she was right away, but introduced herself as a consultant working with the HOA. Consultant? For what? Jet ski patrol? That's when I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just a complaint anymore. This was coordinated. They were trying to build a case, stack up visits, notes, anything they could twist into a violation. Something was coming, and I wasn't sure what. She wasn't just a consultant. After a few awkward minutes of dodging my questions, the woman finally admitted she was there to conduct an informal environmental observation on behalf of the HOA. That's when it all clicked. They were trying to claim my lake posed some kind of ecological concern. She started tossing out words like runoff risk, wildlife disruption, and shoreline impact. I almost laughed. My lake is spring-fed, clean, and has been there longer than most of the houses in their gated community. But now, it looked like they were trying to get the county involved by pushing this angle. The deputy gave me a look like, this just got out of hand, and I could tell even he wasn't sure how to handle it. I asked the woman if she had any permits to be on my land. She didn't. She said she was staying off the edge of the lake and just gathering visual information. But it felt more like she was building a paper trail, getting ready to file a complaint with some agency I hadn't even thought about. Then the real twist dropped. Roy called me. Said he'd gotten a letter that morning, anonymous, no return address, warning him that continued support of non-compliant landowners would have consequences. He didn't know what it meant, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. Someone was playing dirty. And now, it wasn't just about jet skiing or property lines. It was about control, power, and pushing people out. Quietly, legally, and piece by piece. I knew I had to act fast. The moment that consultant started taking photos near my lake, I called my attorney. He'd dealt with nuisance claims before and told me exactly what to do. Document everything, keep interactions civil, and make sure they had no legal grounds to stand on. I went straight to my safe, pulled out the original property survey, environmental reports, and water rights documents. By the time the deputy was wrapping up his visit, I had a full packet ready to go. I handed it to him and calmly explained that I was aware of the HOA's history of overreach. I pointed out that my land wasn't subject to their rules, and that any trespassing or false claims moving forward would be met with legal response. The deputy took it seriously. He glanced through the paperwork, nodded slowly, then walked over to the consultant and told her it was time to leave. She didn't argue, just packed up her clipboard and left without another word. As she drove off, I thought that was the end of it. But then Roy showed up, letter in hand. We compared notes, and that's when it hit us both. The wording in his anonymous letter matched phrases used in emails I'd gotten months ago. Same strange wording, same tone. I pulled up the old messages. They were sent from a masked domain, one I traced back to the HOA president's real estate company. Turns out, this wasn't about the lake at all. He'd been eyeing my land for years. Everything suddenly made sense. The constant complaints, the surprise visits, the shady letter to Roy. It was all a setup. The HOA president wasn't trying to protect the neighborhood or enforce rules. He was trying to pressure me into selling. My land, with its private lake and open acreage, was the last piece of property standing between him and a full expansion. of his real estate development. He couldn't force me to sell, so he tried to make life uncomfortable enough that I'd want to leave. But I wasn't going anywhere. With my lawyer's help, I filed a cease and desist against the HOA for harassment, including a formal complaint about their attempts to misrepresent jurisdiction. Roy agreed to submit a statement, and a few other neighbors came forward quietly with their own stories of being pressured or intimidated. Turns out, I wasn't the only one they'd tried this with. I just pushed back harder. The deputy never came back. And that consultant never heard from her again. The HOA backed off, for now. I beefed up my security, installed cameras, and posted clear signage along my property lines. Most of all, I kept living my life, jet skiing when I wanted, grilling with friends, enjoying the land the way my family always had. In the end, it wasn't about a lake, a jet ski, or even a deed. It was about standing your ground when someone thinks they can bully you out of what's yours. And trust me, I'm not the type to back down.